So let me ask you something. Are you exhausted from leading, even though your workload hasn't changed? You're capable, your team is talented, but somehow everything still comes back to you. What if the overload isn't the work, but how you're showing up in conversations? So, Matt Williams is back with us today. He's an executive coach and leadership strategist. There we go. That's a hard word to say. Who helps mid to C level leaders cut through noise, build clarity fast, and develop teams that actually think for themselves. And today we're solving that problem. So, Matt, it's really great to have you back. And I know that there's so many capable leaders out there that feel totally overwhelmed, overloaded. They're buried in meetings, decisions, and constant interruptions. Do you think this is really about too much work, or is it something else happening in how they're leading their conversations?
It's probably a little bit of both, Lisa. Um, I think the workload has dramatically increased, but I do believe that leaders oftentimes create an environment that is counterproductive for themselves. They end up being potentially the bottleneck at times unknowingly, and their workload increases because of that.
Right, right. So, conversation, what about the conversational aspect of things? You talk about how leaders lead in conversations. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. I had an interesting conversation with the CEO a couple of weeks ago about how everything can seem to bounce back to him. He had a competent team, um, well hired people. He was certainly a personable individual and a smart individual. But in his conversations, he would take back responsibility for what had been given and or want to play a part in the decision and ultimately the execution of things that had been handed off. And it was as simple as using the we phrase or inviting them for further counsel and direction. And I think it's it on the one hand, it's a sign of a really caring leader, somebody who wants the best for their people, doesn't want them to fail, doesn't, wants to ensure that the team is well aligned and everything's going well. And yet at the same time, through the conversations they carry on with the people they communicate, a degree of um, trust concerns, control concerns, and ultimately take back oftentimes what's been handed out or delegated just to ensure that they have some control over the decision or input into the decision. So they create this
Yeah,
environment, yeah, that creates kind of this check-in mentality, or we've got to check in with the boss before we move forward on this to get validation or approval.
right. And then they create a somewhat of a dependency, so because the team doesn't feel confident moving forward without their input. And then that causes that overload.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
it's a
exactly
constant
right.
cycle.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yep.
The more they fix, the more they're needed.
Yeah, and they're typically extraordinarily competent people. The pace of business is fast. The pressure is fast and demanding, both from above, from board level people, as well as from the people that report to you. And so the most expeditious pathway oftentimes feels like just giving the answer, given the
Hmm.
direction. Uh, you know, and that creates the dependency you're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And so in real life, day to day, in these situations, what does it look like um, in everyday life in leadership?
What does that dependency look like?
Well, I mean, how does it happen? So, what about a meeting where the leader does the most talking? I know I've been in situations like that, and I've often it's just like the leader doing the talking and the team doesn't really have any input. Does that affect day-to-day leadership and teams?
Potentially, it depends on what's being addressed or communicated at the time, right? We all like to hear ourselves talk, I think, because we feel like we're there's a sense of control, and there's a sense that when we're speaking that other people, just like you now, are capturing it and understanding it and going to act upon it, when the reality is we don't know what's going on in their heads. And too infrequently do we stop to ask the questions about perceptions, feedback, understanding, etc. So if it's a directive moment, right, then sometimes the talking, the leadership being directive is necessary. When it's a moment for the transition of responsibility or ownership, then I believe leaders should be, if they believe they have the right people in the seat, with the right capability and competency, then we ought to treat them as such and give them that authority and ask questions and guide rather than dictate.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to time. I think leaders have feel so pressured to get things moving. But if they're jumping in and trying to fix something before it's broken, then they're not letting that teammate kind of fail and figure it out. And then so I'm just imagining like a team that's just staring up at their leader, like waiting for them to make a move to like as a dictator, right?
Can be, yeah. And you mentioned the speed of things, but we've got to remember that one of leadership's key responsibilities is the development of others. So it's finding that balance, and I think we have a tendency to, we being the leadership community, we have a tendency to um, err on the side of speed, um, rather than lean into both, which is a developmental opportunity as well as getting the business result that we're after. And there seems to be a bit of a misperception in the marketplace, that to your point, that it's faster to X, right? And at times when you have to be directive, when the individual's not capable, competent, doesn't have the skill set, the experience, whatever it is, that direction is the most expedition and best way to approach it. But when you have an executive leadership team and the competency is and capability is high, it takes no more time to coach them than it does to direct them. Um,
Mhm.
and it comes down oftentimes to trust and respect. And again, it's not something we're evaluating or intentionally dismissing them. It is done in light of expediency. But long term, when you add up all of those interactions, it's not faster because you're having to do it, to your point, you're creating dependency. They're going to be back to the trough again, and all of that's going to eat up time long term. So you can give them direction one time, but you can count on the fact that you're going to be doing it over and over again, which takes more time. It doesn't feel like it, right? It's kind of like the time management issue, right? It feels faster to multitask when the reality is it's slower.
Mm. So what is the cause and effect of that then? What is the result if that continues to happen?
People will leave. Good people will leave, right?
Because they
Decisions.
feel like they're not being respected, they're not being trusted. Why do they leave?
Yeah,
Okay.
um, because they're not given the authority, the autonomy to do the job that they've been brought in to do. Decisions get slowed, innovation slows, the leader themselves gets burned out because of the very situation they've created.
Right. So it's like the leader basically by over what's the word? Being a helicopter essentially. they ruin their team and the confidence that the teammates have in themselves because they feel like, I guess it's just like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's ranges of the behavior, and there is everybody's familiar with the micromanager, right? Who's
That was the word I
uh,
was looking for. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not always a micromanager. It can just be a really well-intentioned a leader that, through their behavior, their communication style, they unknowingly create this environment that people feel like they need to run ideas past them, run decisions past them, check in with them, et cetera. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be that anal retentive micromanager that's doing it out of insecurity.
Absolutely. So, what in this dynamic erodes confidence?
What erodes confidence
Hmm.
for the individuals that are on the team? Um,
Hmm.
I think anytime you sense that you're not valued for what you bring to the table, your confidence is impacted.
Hmm.
Um, and again, that leads to retention issues and engagement issues and a number of things.
Yeah, I think and you're like you're right. Like it's not like these leaders are bad people. I was leading a huge team and just was so overloaded with stuff to do that I had not checked in with one of my teammates for quite a while and we ended up having a hard conversation and she brought it to me because I didn't wasn't giving her the time that she needed just to move forward with what I was asking her to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I didn't see that. Because sometimes there's so many moving pieces. But she just felt so unappreciated. And I felt terrible because that wasn't my intention to make someone feel unappreciated. But so I've been on both sides of that where I felt unappreciated. And then as a leader, one of my teammates felt unappreciated because there wasn't even that check-in. I think those little tiny weekly check-ins are so important with your team. It may seem like it takes a long time, but really it doesn't. If you avoid talking to your team, everything's going to slowly start crumbling, in my opinion. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I had an engagement recently with a chief operating officer, and by nature we're all different, right? We've all got different styles, different communication styles, different behavioral needs, etc. And this individual was extraordinarily gifted at what he did. He was analytical, an attorney by profession, serving as a COO, and as you might guess, very analytical in his approach to work. So, not building out the relationships um, was not something that he really thought about. I mean, it was about the work, right? Until it was discovered that the team felt dismissed, disrespected, not valued highly because he hadn't spent time to develop those relationships and understand the people, at a deeper level. And so those little things like way back in the day when I was with Hewlett Packard, they had this philosophy of management by walking around. So for a scheduled analytical individual, part of the solution for him was simply to put on his calendar, get up and walk around and check in with people, right? And
Right.
that action alone gave people the sense that he was interested in what they had to say. He would catch things, earlier. He was able to develop relationships, etc. So yeah, it can be a lot of little things, not necessarily one big thing.
Hmm. I remember having a boss, or I guess like the CEO in a small place that I was working in. I swear he had zero clue what I did, like zero clue. And it drove me nuts because there wasn't a lot of us. And And I was doing something that I felt was so important for the community, and we were so community focused and about improving community, and he just didn't get it. And that
Hmm.
feeling of being misunderstood, that really harmed my confidence in the facility. And then it was like preventing me from wanting to work harder, if that makes
There you
sense.
go.
Like suddenly I was like, oh, if they don't get it, then why am I doing this? And then I was like, it was hard to put in the effort that was needed to maintain that.
Sure. Yeah, I understand completely. Um, it can be a nuanced problem or a glaring problem, right? And I had somebody tell me many years ago that the role of a leader was to work themselves out of being necessary. In other words, the role is to develop the people to take over all responsibility. And I fully embrace that. I mean, you don't hire people to fill seats. You hire them because they're capable and competent, and it's our jobs to help them fulfill that potential. And I think all too
Hmm.
often the workload, the demands, everything presses in. And again, I don't think it's intentional, but we respond to that stimulus rather than maintaining our focus on what our overarching goal is.
Hmm. Yeah. So then what do we do? What are the things to fix this problem? What are some things that leaders can do?
Get a coach.
Hmm.
Um, well, first and foremost, I guess, is ask for feedback. Whether that's done through an assessment process, 360 process, or simply soliciting feedback from team members. It's what is that? The emperor has no clothes. That's the one avenue that you probably won't get much honest feedback, but it's still feedback nonetheless. And simply look at how your people are developing. Are they taking ownership and responsibility? Are they bringing it back to you? Are decisions being executed and acted upon without you having to step in and be the filter, judge, and jury?
Hmm. So what about personal life, and where does that fit into all of this? Because most often than not, leaders are looked at like they're almighty, like they've got their crap together, like like nothing can harm them, right? Like I know someone who runs this something in the city, and he's very up there. He said like he almost doesn't pretend to be an actor at times because everyone thinks that he's got everything together, but the truth is that he doesn't. So at the core of it, he's still a human being. How do we make people understand that?
Make people understand that leaders are just human beings.
Yeah, I feel like there's a misconception that leaders have everything together.
Yeah, I don't know, Lisa. It's a good question. I think it's born of our our upbringing, right? How we view authority and um, how we interact with it over time. Um, I think it is a leader's responsibility as well to um, be a bit vulnerable, to be authentic, to um, be willing to show some fallibility along the way. But I don't know that it's our job or a leader's job to convince people that they're not perfect. Um,
Hmm.
Now, if they're actively doing that, that's another problem altogether, and there's some insecurities there, right? But I think it's more in the eye of the beholder than it is for the leader. I would like to believe, anyway. I don't think they spend a lot of time trying to prove to others how great they are necessarily.
Yeah, for sure. So, who do you feel should be paying attention to this conversation right now?
Leaders, those who are ultimately where the buck stops, right? Where they're beginning to wonder if it's if they're surrounded by the right people, if they're not producing, they being the organization's not meeting the targets that they've set for themselves, if they're overwhelmed, if they feel as if they're on a treadmill, right? But they can't put their finger on why. Because again, it is oftentimes not a glaring issue by any means. This CEO that I was referencing earlier, it was an awareness that came about through a conversation. He was sensing that something was off, didn't really understand why the team was behaving the way it was necessarily, and in his mind, he was pulling all the right levers, right? Engaging appropriately and giving them the autonomy that they needed, but it was subtle things that suggested that he needed them to return to the loft to check in, right? So again, it's not typically not a glaring issue. Feedback can help them understand how they're being perceived and the degree of respect and autonomy that their people feel that they have,
Mhm.
and go forward from there. And again, it may just be that sense that something's off. And typically, when you have that sense that something's off, something's off. It's
Mhm.
just necessary to qualify. It may be this or something, altogether different.
Yeah, you can definitely feel it when there's a disconnect with a team. Sometimes, like you said, you just have that feeling, but you can't quite pinpoint what it is. And another good point that you made is sometimes giving too much autonomy for teammates to do whatever they need to do is also not a good thing because then everyone's kind of on their own mission and there's no coming together of that mission. So nobody kind of understands what the mission is. And then everyone's doing their own thing without that checkpoint, like you talked about. Man, it's a difficult position.
Well, it is, and there is a distinct difference between delegation and abdication, right? You can't just throw it out there and wish them luck, right? Hope for the best. There,
It's like the lottery.
yeah, there's a responsibility there, but you hit the nail on the head. It's not easy. Um,
Mhm.
their role, their responsibilities. There's paradox at every turn in leadership. If they're too much of one thing, they need to be less of another, and it can be difficult to navigate.
For sure. So tell everyone more about the work that you do.
So, as I alluded to earlier, I'm an executive coach, and I typically work with senior leaders. And again, that can be a founder, that can be a CEO, that can be a division head, leaders who have built something, all right, and are now at the top of what they built is compressing the organization, keeping it from evolving further just because of the way that they're leading, not getting the most out of their people. So that's who I work with. You can call it identity coaching, executive coaching, whatever it is, right, has led this individual to lead in the way that they do. And we're looking for ways to unlock that a bit, adjust behaviors a bit so that they are able to get more out of themselves as well as out of their teams to focus on the right things, right? And let go of the need to be involved in all of it.
So if you were to kind of think about your clients and look at what a common issue is, what are some of the most common things that you see when working with leaders, common troubles and problems?
In line with what we're talking about today, it's the leader that uh, I hope this isn't misunderstood. The leader that cares too much. They
Mhm.
confuse caring with fixing for.
Mhm.
Um, And we've all heard of tough love. I think there needs to be some mix of that because caring for our employees means developing our employees. And if we do everything for them and keep them from failing, it may feel more comfortable, but we're doing them a disservice. So that's where a lot of my work lies, is in redefining who the individual is, what their value system is, what they actually want to achieve through their leadership, and then how that's coming about. We change the conversation dynamic so that they not only help employees clarify the challenge that they're facing or the decision that they're facing, but we ensure that they're able to leave that responsibility with the employee rather than stepping in and taking it over um, and adding to their workload. So that's the preponderance of my work. The rest of it is typically around communication and presence and self-regulation, all of those kind of things that play into this.
Yeah, that because that was going to be my next question is you're working with leaders. How do you kind of coach them on going back to their team? Because suddenly they're going to be so seen so differently. And so if for example, they have to start having more difficult conversations or they're changing the way they're doing things, how do they slowly start to change without it being overwhelming, especially for their team?
So there's a number of different strategies. One is to share their developmental goals or objectives with the team so
Mm,
that everybody's invested in the process. Sometimes it's just reporting out, and sometimes it's just making the changes and the team has to adjust and adapt. So depending upon the organization and what stage they're at, how mature the team is, et cetera. There are different strategies to both, obviously, to work with the executive, but also to work with the system that surrounds the executive.
right, right, for sure. And so, Matt, tell everyone more about where people can find you.
Epiphanyprofessional.com is the website. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn and various social media outlets. I work with a few clients. I have a boutique specialty practice in this space, and work with just a few clients that are struggling with this type of issue, and that want to resolve that for themselves and their organizations.
Matt, is there anything that I left out today that you'd like to speak about before we go?
I think we covered quite a bit of ground, Lisa. If people want to get in contact with me, obviously there's a contact button on the website. Feel free to reach out. We can have a conversation. It's not a sales call. It's just a conversation to see if working together would be a solution that might work for them.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sure for being here today and for sharing about all of your expertise in this. It's very difficult, and especially with today's culture, everything is changing, and learning how to adapt to that as a leader is so important. And having the right coach in your corner can be so helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody shared with me this morning that they had recently seen Adam Grant, who you may or may not be familiar with, give a keynote speech, and he indicated that every leader should have a coach in order to have that confidential sounding board to work with, process issues, and get clarity. Obviously, if you're a coach, as I am, you lean into that, right? But having been an executive and having worked with a coach, I thank Adam Grant for making that statement, and believe that it's true as well. I think there's tremendous value in that relationship, whatever form it takes.
Absolutely, I agree. And so, to our audience, thank you for tuning in. If today's episode hit home, if you've been the fixer, the rescuer, the bottleneck, maybe it's time to shift the conversation. So, Matt's resources will be in the show notes for you, because great leaders, they don't create followers, they create thinkers. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Stay tuned for the
Thank you,
next
Lisa.
episode. And until next time, yes, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.